Hello and welcome to this edition of our In Conversation. I'm Geoffrey Qhena. When you hear the name Geoffrey Qhena, I don't know if you, like me, associated with some of the largest companies in South Africa. Let me tell you the two big ones that he has under his head at the moment. He's the chairman of Exxaro. That's South Africa's biggest coal producer and the biggest supplier of coal to Eskom, if you didn't know. He's also the chairman of Telkom. Telkom, of course, used to be South Africa's biggest telecommunications company. These days, it's sits at number 3 in terms of mobile phone companies, but is one of the fastest growing as well. He's in the studio with me to talk about things South African, things African, things the world. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Geoffrey. Thanks for inviting me.
I wanted to begin with those companies that are under your purview and talk a little bit about the environment that we have inside South Africa. I think I would be correct to say last year, as we began the cutting down cycle from the Reserve Bank side, people were optimistic that 2025 might well be the year that kicks off that recovery in South Africa's economy that we're all waiting for. Here we are in 2025. I don't want to put anything in front of you. I want to ask you the question, are you still as optimistic as you were in 2024?
Well, Geoffrey, it's only March 3. So it's the beginning of the new fiscal year. So the growth is not at least indications at the level that one was hoping we would be. But as I said, still early days. I'm still optimistic. But the reality is the environment is tough. There's a lot of good talk. There's a lot of good plans. I think once the implementations materialize, I think then things, at least in my mind, will be a bit better. But we're having a tough environment. We've seen growth projections which are not pleasing. So that means as corporates and as business, we need to step up in terms of playing our role.
Yeah. When you say implementation, you're talking from a government side.
Yep.
The promise is made.
The promise is made from government in terms of the environment, but also for us as business. If we had said we're going to expand, obviously it's important that we work with government.
Yes.
We need to start doing that, but we can't do it. Well, in fact, this environment just calls for stronger partnership.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we'll talk about those partnerships because that's one of the key drivers to the optimism that we saw last year. I wanted to talk a little bit about the environment, and especially as it pertains to one of the companies that is under your hat, and that's Exxaro. The logistics side has been the big bugbear that many people have been saying ought to be addressed for South Africa to be able to take off. Have you seen enough from the government commitment actions to suggest that we could be turning the corner on fixing the transportation and logistics side?
Yeah, so when one looks at what was the performance last year vis-a-vis this year from our largest logistics company, I think there's good signs, there's good improvement, but also the role that government is playing in terms of now starting to assist, translate to open up for private and public partnerships is useful. So you would have seen in the results when our acting CEO presented, logistics is one big part, especially for Exxaro. Yeah. We've seen some improvements, but we're not there yet. I think the reality is not there. But I think when I said there's the need for partnerships, the role that private sector started to play in terms of engaging with Transnet to try and find solutions to say how best we can work. I think the voice of business has helped in that regard from my perspective.
Are you happy with that?
I think the visibility is good.
Yeah.
The fact that there's been receptance to that, okay, that's good. And I think when I look at the improvement and the path we're going into, I think it's good. But when we say, okay, now we have a framework, we want to invite private sector to come in and also play a role, it's well and good, that environment, but that's where the implementation comes in. Right. So now let's allow for that to happen. Because we have the potential as a country to really export more than what we're doing. Well, I will be biased and talk about our company, which is on the coal side. I mean, there's other minerals. I mean, as you know, we are on the diversification. We're looking at other minerals. There's other minerals as well that will have to be there. So let's take advantage of that. And the logistics part is very, very important.
Absolutely. The framework that's been created, I want to know your thoughts around it. You say the principle, the fact that the principle has been accepted is great. Yes, now we need to implement. But are you happy? Are you in a position where you can say the framework that's been created is the correct one? Or do we need to tweak that as to how the private sector enters into these things? And I'm asking this question because later I'm going to ask you. Some people are beginning to suggest that we see the power of the private sector extending beyond giving us services and products to now governing us. But we'll park that question for now. Let's just talk about what's been created now.
So Godfrey, I think the framework is the right start. So some of these, especially when we're coming into an area where you had one party which was playing that role, now opening up. Obviously, one has to ensure that there's learnings in that process. So now, I don't think anyone in private sector says, oh, no, government must step aside, or Transnet must step aside, and then private sector takes over 100%. I think it's a bit dangerous for that to happen. So because we're all learning in that process, I think it's a good start. I will repeat, it's a good start. We'll have learnings from that. Because remember, there's the fixed infrastructure, there's the rolling stock that must be there, and there's the funding thereof. And also, I mean, private sector by its nature, those that are opening up there will also be informed by the markets that are out there. So, and let's remember the role that Transnet plays is much broader than that. So 100%. One has to balance that. So I think it's a good start. But let's implement. And then let's learn from that, and let's take advantage and improve.
As Exxaro, are you doing anything about it?
So because we are we are one of the key players, we're also part of the business formation in that, in ensuring at least in the collaboration. Exactly. So we are part of that as the part of the business formation, but also from ourselves as the company. I think we've looked to say, no, what else can we do differently? Because logistics for us is key. I mean, if you can't evacuate what you mine, So we've also looked at ourselves. That's why we've looked at other avenues. That's why we've looked at Mozambique as another option. It comes with its own dynamics. It comes, all these bulk commodities best work in a rail situation. We take them off the rail, you put them in trucks, you're getting other risks that you had not anticipated. And you have to now try and manage that. The cost structure is a bit different. But we have to do something. I think the CEO in his result presentation expanded on that. I mean, why we did this and the extent of us going to this. But we have to, because as business, we have to say, we have to have a plan B.
Absolutely. You are also, of course, did I remind you, the chairman of Telkom, big mobile communications telecom player, as well as big on the provision of infrastructure, the new infrastructure they say, which is of course the internet and telephone and all those other things. I wanted just to talk to you a little bit about that space. The last time I had an interview with Ralph and Peter at MTN Group, we spoke about the telecom landscape, and I was asking the question, like, Ralph, do you think we are at the optimum in terms of the number of operators and the players that we have? And you were saying, Godfrey, this sector evolves all the time. And he was suggesting that there could be room for further consolidation. Your thoughts in respect to the playing field?
So communication is very important. In fact, it makes the world smaller.
It does. It does.
So that means then we have to be more efficient. It evolves. Having been exposed to this particular sector, it's amazing for me because you need to continuously invest, but your product becomes cheaper.
All the time.
so all the time. So you really have to say how smart you do that.
Sure.
So I'm not going to opine on how many players should be here. We can look in the world. There's opportunities. but it's how best we do that. And I think when we as a Telkom in that regard, I think we were on the right footing. The people talk 5G.
I had 6G when I was coming to work today.
I had 6G from my CEO. He was in Barcelona in a big thing. And I'm thinking we're just settling on 5G. So that means things are becoming more faster and faster. That means the investment becomes more and more. So because of the nature of the size of the investment that one will need, one will have to be careful how you do that. Because when it's all said and done, the consumers, when they open up and they want to use data, they don't want to think about it. When they want to make a phone call, they get frustrated now. Suddenly it just says ringing and nobody's ringing, or the network is not there. So the needs of the consumer, and they want all of that much cheaper. So we have to be smart in how we do it.
Is there room for prices to come down? Because this is one big bugbear for South Africans, isn't it?
So we have to be competitive. But as I said, the expenditure, the capital expenditure that is needed is significant, because you have to come up with these latest technologies that make life much easier. So that make it seamless for connectivity to happen. So balancing that and ensuring that the business continues to be sustainable is important. So I don't think it would be a wise idea for entities to go on price wars, because then otherwise we won't exist after that. But each business has to look at itself, what works best, where is the price point that makes it sustainable into the future.
Consolidation?
No, I will not comment on that. So Telkom is number 3.
Yes.
And then Telkom has gone through a difficult time. Telkom is coming out nicely. There's a lot of good work we're doing.
Absolutely, the results were excellent. The market loved the results.
Yeah. So, but we're on the closed period, so I won't talk about these ones now. So, but I think we're on the right footing. Where there's need for us to be more efficient and we can be able to do it ourselves, we'll do that. Where there's an opportunity to partner with people in whatever form, shape or size, we would look at that. But we won't be blind to that fact. But we have to look at what the customer needs and how best. But also look into the future. Because as I said, I mean, when one had a cell phone, we were largely mobile. Now data is dominating. And it comes with its own challenges. So now you're in the US, you call somebody, or you're in the UK or Europe, you call somebody here, you would recall how expensive it was.
I do.
Now you have other operators, or you have other, well, let's mention one, we have WhatsApp, and people use WhatsApp. But where does the revenue lie? Because what people don't realize, whether mobile operators do benefit from something like WhatsApp. But it's very convenient for customers.
Absolutely.
So is that how you balance that? How do you continue to provide to ensuring that you're sustainable?
I wanted to come back to the issue of collaboration between government and the private sector. You said at the beginning of our conversation that this is on the right path. And you did say there were a few things that needs to be done in terms of implementation. What's missing in your view in terms of those things that ought to be implemented?
So when we say, when government says, okay, we want to invite private sector, that's well and good. But put specific timelines to say, okay, now so open it up. So for an example, let's take the independent power producers, where there's been a period, you open up, you have a round, you award to people, those that get it, it's clear, and then they have to connect. So it's the same for me on the logistics, for an example. To say, so now the framework is there, now we're all thinking so, but then let's just be clear. So when we're going to get that, and then invite those. I mean, I know there's been sort of an invitation of some sort. So, but let's put timelines. I mean, I read the budget speech from the minister, where he has also mentioned 2016, for an example, some of the infrastructure initiatives that they want. I think when we have those, let's be firm on those. It's not going to be we shouldn't try and be perfect. And tick all the boxes, otherwise then we'll know before we implement.
Sure, so a little more discipline on the part of government. So which steps into my next question around the suggestion from some that by so involving the private sector in helping in doing stuff that the state ought to be doing, by stealth, we are putting the private sector into power. A little bit different to what's happening in the US with Dodge, but perhaps by stealth, as I'm suggesting. Is that a view that you would share, that perhaps we should be curtailing here the power of the private sector and how it's helping in making decisions that affect us in our daily lives?
So for me, a good case is, let's look at the state of the finances of our country. Well, government can only do so much. It is clear it does not have the resources to do much more. So now, is it fair then to wait for government to do it at its pace? It's not going to happen. It's going to take too long. But we know private sector has got access to capital. But it's also in its interest for things to happen.
True.
It's in our interest as Exxaro for the coal to move from the mines to the port.
Sure.
So now, if we're saying, okay, because I saw in the budget speech, Transnet didn't get much money, they might get some guarantees, maybe. But at that pace, there's lost opportunities. So I'll
sound
give
like
you.
you're disappointed.
No, I'm not disappointed. That's the reality, because the government has to do balancing act.
Right.
I think it's important.
Sure.
So, and then that's where private sector needs to come in to be able to play a role without running government, because government has to run government, but we need each other.
Sure.
And also this notion that there's different animals. We're all South Africans here. We're all South Africans here. At the end of the day, if we work together smartly, we'll all win.
Absolutely.
But it has to be a smart partnership. I mean, it shouldn't be like, okay, now private sector looks like the clever ones and government not so the clever ones. Then it's a problem.
Guardrails in terms of how that partnership works, and also perhaps timelines in terms of how long this thing subsists.
As long as now we're not prisoners of all the guardrails that we have, because sometimes you can put them and then suddenly now you can't move.
Yeah.
You see, so but we know government must govern, but then private sector must play a role. But if we have to collaborate, we have to each one move, but allow for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, element of trust comes into play here. But let's all remember, South Africa is key.
Yeah, 100%.
We've got unemployment, especially for youth.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable.
Absolutely. So South Africa as a country is in the crosshairs of a very powerful man who sits in another part of the world. I just want to talk a little bit about the external environment as it is impacting South Africa right now. We know about the measures that have been promised by President Trump towards South Africa for a variety of reasons. And I don't want to go into this. I just want to talk from a business perspective how you have been handling that and how perhaps you think government ought to be treading the line here.
So the environment is very tricky. Business thrives well when there's an element of predictability. I sit in these boards. We have to do budgets for. It's a bit tricky because the environment has changed now. But it also creates opportunities. Somebody did say once, you never put a crisis to a waste.
Sure.
But it's an opportunity for countries to reflect, to say, okay, if we were getting so much assistance, maybe it's time to reflect, to say how best we do that. Or maybe which other markets can also provide an opportunity. Or how do we collaborate with others? So us as business is just to say, okay, well, fortunately, we've not been exporting coal to the US.
Sure.
But us as business, but there's other parts. Because remember, it's not us. We provide coal to steelmakers. Steelmakers export to the US, then they're impacted by the tariffs.
Absolutely.
So it's important that we all actually think about that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's to say, let's use this to reflect which other markets can we look at?
Let's diversify.
Let's diversify. If we have how do we strengthen those? But also let's look at which other parts then, if parts which we can maybe develop, which we have not developed. It's an opportunity for us.
Right.
I know sometimes when we have markets and those markets work and then we get comfortable and then we just continue and we don't look at other markets. It's an opportunity for us to look at that. I will not advise government. I mean, I think government, at government to government level, they should know what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
But they know they have the responsibility of ensuring that the environment is conducive for business to be able to excel.
Some people have been suggesting that perhaps also government ought to be sounding out the private sector in terms of perhaps how to respond to some of these, given the actions that are being taken, as we've been discussing, impact the private sector. Have they been talking to you? Do you talk to them?
No, I don't talk to the government, but I'm sure my CEOs. I've spoken to government at various times. Not now, not now after. Or not at least this year. I mean, but we've been talking to government broadly as part of the business formation, and I think we need to continue to do that. And naturally, the CEOs would have more conversation than I would. It helps to continuously talk. You know, when I started working, I thought people in management talk too much, but I realized the importance of that. I realized the importance of this because it helps. Yeah, I realized. So it helps for government to engage with private sector. But fortunately we have, at least in my mind, the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, which is key, which appreciates the impact of some of the do's and the don'ts. And at least with the minister having come in Pakistan, I think there's a bit more openness, I think, in my mind, for government to engage with them. And I think we should use that opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. You mentioned that, and I was going to raise it because it's one of the things that I was going to make, that you had a situation in the past where there appeared to be actually parallel paths, if you like, between what foreign affairs was doing versus what trade and industry was doing, and yet the two impacted the country as a whole and its economy. But now perhaps there's better alignment. You speak about diversifying. One of the other conversations we have been having as a country, I think, it's about what does South Africa do in these circumstances? And people have been saying, what about the continent? What are your thoughts in respect to the AfCFTA and also just South Africa's engagement with the continent?
So when I talk implementation and really being committed to the cause, it's precisely on that. I mean, we have the Africa Free Trade Agreement. It's great. It's a no-brainer. I mean, when I was at IDC, I mean, a mandate landed us into the continent, and one traveled the continent, and you could see lots of opportunities. And for me, it's a no-brainer.
Have we taken enough advantage of it?
I don't know. Truth be told, we haven't. It's a no-brainer. We haven't. We appreciate it. We all know. I mean, it's good that we've had new presidents come, and they've actually welcomed it. But we must take advantage of that. I know it's not easy. It's complex. I mean, you've got different countries, different nations.
Regulations.
But
it's trying to simplify
But if we are committed to that, then we should use that opportunity to say, how do we simplify this? You know, so one example. So I went to one country. I will not mention it. so they had lots of livestock, lots. I mean, lots.
I can think of 2, 3.
They had lots. Starts with an M. They had lots.
Okay.
In fact, their livestock was more than the population
of the country.
Yes. But they imported cheese and they imported milk.
Sure.
Processed.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, okay, maybe if the issue was the technology or the power, but surely there's African countries like South Africa who can do that.
Have already this.
So there are some of those low-hanging fruits. But I must comment. There's a number of businesses that are indeed taking advantage of it. But we can do more. I mean, we can just do more here in the continent.
Yeah. Before we look outside the rest of the continent.
Yes.
Time flies when you're having fun. I just don't realize we've got a couple of minutes, and I can't let you go before talking about your new guy at Exxaro, Ben Magara. How did you arrive at him? I thought he was done with it.
So he, you know, when you want a true miner who knows the business, which is coal in this instance, but also not only coal, because we're diversifying some of the other minerals, who's been there, who's done it, it's a no-brainer that Ben is that. We were fortunate that he's part of the board, because we brought him in 2022 to be part of the board.
Right.
So
He already knows the
so
company.
he knows the company.
Yeah.
But some of the assets that the company has were the assets when he was at Anglo, for example. So he knows them. So and where we see ourselves as the company presently, where we are, we need to stabilize the company.
Sure.
And so we needed a safe pair of hands, and as the board, we applied our minds and we thought this was.
What do you want him to do? How long does he have?
So he's got 3 years,
Right.
which is not a long time. He has to ensure that the strategy continues to be implemented, diversification. But most importantly, firstly, he has to stabilize the business. Because, whenever there's a change in guard, the company gets a bit of a shake. So he needs to stabilize the company. He has to ensure that the diversification happens. The shareholders are impatient, and rightfully so. To say, we've heard you talk about, I talked about implementation. The shareholders have been saying, but you also have not been implementing. So he has to do that. But he has to ensure also looking beyond that, because also it's not only the minerals part, it's also the renewable part, the energy. Because remember, we promised 2050 we have to be carbon neutral as a company.
Yeah.
So there's that other part as well, which is something that is also embraced. So the strategy is in place. The strategy has to ensure that he implements, ensuring that the company stays stable as well.
Sure. Final question. What went wrong with Dr. Tsego? And I realize, of course, I'm stepping here on potentially some delicate legal ground.
I'm glad you prefaced that. So I think it will only be fair if I don't say blow by blow what happened. I think, we go through a process. There's issues of governance that we have to deal with. And as the board, we looked at that. It's unfortunate that we had to terminate before, I think, at least this period is. So it's not a proud moment, at least for me, as the chairman. You have a CEO, you want to work with the CEO, you have to, and especially when the CEO is technically very strong, which she is. I think we have to give it to her that. I think, but there came a stage where, and as far as some of the governance issues, we couldn't just see eye to eye how we deal with those matters, and I think it's only fair, because otherwise he'll have to have the right of reply. And we've gone through the process, but he chose the path of resigning, which we respected and accepted.
Thank you, sir, for taking the time to talk to us, and thank you for being candid and talking about some difficult decisions that were taken. I think all of us who watch from our side, knowing the people involved, certainly, as you say, we were all sad. But thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Geoffrey Qhena, thank you. The chairman of Exxaro, the chairman of our Telkom, in conversation with us here on CNBC Africa. Until next time, goodbye.